Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on the podcast. In this episode, I am joined by a regular guest on the podcast, the legend himself, Jem Fuller. Jem is a coach, a facilitator, a speaker, and the author of The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men. Every time I've had Jem on the podcast, it has been an incredible conversation. This guy is so wise in his time and in his knowledge of personal transformation, but the experiences of his life that he shares, we can all take away so many lessons from it. And that's why I love having conversations with him. I'm very grateful that it's turned into a great friendship as well. And in this podcast, we just dive straight into what is that communication? How does it look in relationships from the masculine side, from the feminine side? How can we use this to improve our relationships? How can we use this to improve our life in so many different ways? Why men struggle to reach out and how they can by becoming more thoughtful and conscious, utilizing mindful habits in order to create growth and transformation within yourself. Sometimes we search for these big things, and yes, going to a different environment will help with that, but it's the small daily things. And then we also talk about things like legacy and how to leave your impact on the world and so much more. I loved this conversation. Last time I interviewed Jem and put the clips up on social media, I think one of them has nearly 1 million views on TikTok and one's nearly at 600,000 on Instagram. So when Jem talks, it is wisdom. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you do too. And just quickly, before we start, I have just released all my offerings, services, and new things and projects for 2025. I'm super excited. It involves events, my membership, my mentorship, my group stuff, possibly some retreats in there. But I am just so excited because it's my mission and purpose to create this impact on the world. And there's an event coming up really soon in Melbourne. You probably won't see this in time, but if you do, Australia Day long weekend, Elevate is happening. But if you want to get all the updates and all the exciting things I've got coming out, click the link in the show notes below, or go to Instagram and follow me, Carlo_Cirillo, and you'll see everything that I launch, or go to my website, carlocirillo.com. There are so many cool things that you can plug into, you can learn from, and you can utilize in your life to create more growth, more meaning, more purpose in your life. Again, thank you so much for your support, for coming over to Instagram and following the Conscious Podcast, and all the support you leave there. It means so much to me. You are an absolute legend, and I appreciate you. Enjoy this episode. Jem, how are you, brother?
G'day, mate.
Good to see you again. Hasn't been too long.
No, yeah, it feels like the other day.
2-3 months?
I reckon.
I reckon it was August.
It was colder.
Well, it was your son's birthday.
It was, and we're up in the city for that.
Yeah. Hotel room.
In a hotel room.
And now you're joining me in my
beautiful space.
I want to say studio.
Let's call it a studio, man.
It's studio. It's, where I'm doing all the fun things from.
Studio vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've just gotten back, well, not just, but you've in between had a retreat.
Yes, our favourite retreat.
Yeah.
The Himalaya.
Tell me about it.
Oh, dude. There's reasons why it's our favourite thing to do. A few different reasons. In no particular order. One, because the clients have massive transformation. And I know that word gets overused, but it's true. I mean, that's just the word to describe the experience. They go on the retreat as a certain version of themselves, and there's a transformation, and they leave the retreat the next upgraded version of themselves with a different outlook on life. And we literally just got back together again with the clients, I'm going to say a week ago, to have dinner, and they flew interstate, all the Aussie clients, and they flew interstate to come and get back together. And the reason we have this dinner is just to check in on them and see how they're going, integrating that transformation back into their lives again. And it's awesome. We went for dinner and they're all just like, holy shit, I'm seeing life in a different way. And because some of what we teach is there are practices that become habitual foundations of your day-to-day life that are the reason why the transformation is sustainable. It lasts. You don't go back to the way you were. So that's the first reason, is because for the clients it's that. Second reason is for the village, which is our second home up in the Himalayan mountains, and the family that we've been a part of for almost 30 years now. It's really, really close to our hearts and close to their hearts. And we inject cash into their little mini economy. We bring money for them. And we get to touch base on some of the initiatives that we've set up. We built a little school there, and we sponsor a couple of kids through school, and there's a rubbish collection program, and there's a conservation foundation, etc. So we get to actually show up and, touch base on all of that stuff, which is beautiful. And then there's the personal, selfish bit for Talia and for me, which is just, it's one of our favourite places in the world to go and hang out. And we get to do that, so it's beautiful, stunning. Oh, and on a personal note, on this last trip, I can say this now, 3 days trek up into so where we go trekking, it's completely off the grid, your phone doesn't work, remote. There's no other people where we go. We have pack horses carrying all the gear. We camp. It's not comfortable, so it's not for everybody, right? But 3 days trek up into the program, there's this holy pass, and it's been holy for the locals for thousands of years, and holy for me ever since I first went there in the 90s. I've scattered my dad's ashes there, and my brother's ashes have been scattered up there.
Wow.
Talia and I have meditated there a lot. Anyway, when we were there a few weeks ago, I proposed to her.
Wow.
Yeah, I asked
Did I
her
not
to marry
see
me.
this? Did you put it anywhere? Or?
She didn't want me to post it on socials.
There you go, yeah. Congrats, bro.
Thanks, brother. So we got engaged, and the stone, the ring that I had made for her was using the sapphire and the diamonds from her mum's original wedding ring.
Wow.
And I had a ring made for her, carried it up there, and asked her to marry me, and she said yes.
Oh, congratulations, man.
Thanks, man. So yeah, the trip was awesome.
Icing on the cake, hey. If you went up in the mountains and it was a no. But anyway, I don't think it would be a no, but
yeah,
scenarios. That's so powerful. And there's so many points to touch on with that. Like, one, just being there. And I remember watching your story, and you posted one of you and Talia laying in your sleeping bags, and then you opened the tent, and then you looked into the mountains, and I was just like, one, the camera obviously is not able to capture everything. No. Like when you're at a location, your eyes see so much more and take in so much more, but it still looked incredible from there. So just being somewhere that's so, like you said, remote.
Yeah.
Phones don't work, stuff like that. Being in nature would just be amazing.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why the program is transformative for people. And the content obviously is part of it. The conversations that I facilitate are deep, and people come to their own understandings or answers to some of the biggest questions. Who am I? Underneath all the layers, underneath all the roles that I play, who am I really? Why am I here? If there is a reason for me being here, what is it? What should I be doing with the rest of my life? How do I experience a fulfillment or contentment or inner peace and still have an activated motivation to go and do something, anything, whatever that is. So we have these conversations, which are beautiful. So that's part of the transformation, but also a really other big part of it is that it's the hero's journey. It's not easy to get to this place, and it's in a culture that's completely different to ours. I don't know if you've been to India before, but it's very, very different. And then when we're up in the mountains, it's geographically very, very different for us as well. So it's a long way away from home, and it's a different paradigm. So when you make the effort to get somewhere, and it's not easy to get to, and then when you're there, it's stunningly beautiful. Like these mountains, like you said, the photography can't capture it, man. They're massive. These mountains are just so big. And we're up in the northwest tip of India, nestled in between Tibet and Pakistan, in this really peaceful little part of the Himalayas. It's kind of peaceful like Switzerland, but India version, right? And so you're up there, it's culturally different, geographically different, it's been hard to get to, so you're in a different paradigm. Your mindset is open to new ideas, open to neurons firing in sequences that have never fired before. So you're expanding your consciousness, very literally, and we get to guide that. And then we do some really beautiful, special things, like I've been priming the clients and letting them know that some of the things that are going to happen when they get there, like the mountains are really good at taking whatever is not serving you anymore, and you can leave it up in the mountains, and the mountains are fine. They're like, got it, and you can leave it there. So the clients were thinking about leading up to the program, thinking about what doesn't serve me anymore. What do I want to let go of? And then before we trek, they write it down on a piece of paper. And then on the fourth day of the walk, this year it was the fourth day, we spend the whole day in silence. And the first couple of hours, we spend walking super, super slowly. Like if you were in a helicopter flying over us, you'd think we were standing still. That's how slowly we walk. And for some clients, I can almost hear inside their heads, they're freaking out, going, fuck, I can't do this. I can't walk this slowly. What are we doing? We're never going to get anywhere, right? But one by one, they kind of pop into this beautiful silent walking meditation. And then we find a place to sit. We eat. And I guide them through a really beautiful visualization. And then we make a little stone altar. And then they bring their piece of paper, and Papu, my brother, I call him my brother, my adopted brother, who's a holy man, he sits at the altar and burns you come up and you get to burn the thing that you want to let go of. And so simple, but so beautiful. And we're surrounded by these stunning Himalayan mountains, and we're up at altitude, 4,000 meters or whatever. And the only other life forms that you can see are these big, beautiful eagles that are just hovering in pairs. They just soar above you in pairs. It's stunning, man. So stuff like that, we get to facilitate beautiful, deep ritual and ceremony.
I think there's this side of, for people that have been on a retreat, whatever retreat, and you're physically away from your environment, like it's not a, in the city retreat. It's out of your environment. There's something about that makes you go, okay, I can let go of that stress and pressure and be present in those. And because I've held retreats in the past, like I even myself going on retreats, knowing that when you're somewhere else, you're there with an intention almost. It's not like you're going on a road trip because, if I was to come down the coast, I'm not thinking of this is a retreat and I'm going to focus on these things and have someone guide me.
Yeah.
I'm just, Great Ocean Road, have a coffee, have lunch, come back type thing. It's a nice experience, but it's not intentionally going somewhere with the focus on growth.
Yeah, that's right. There's intention, there's purpose, and there's effort. And you've been building up to it, you've been leading up to it. If you're coming to the Indian Himalaya, it's not something that you just kind of said, oh, this afternoon, let's go do this thing, right? There's planning and preparation and visas and passports and logistics and all that sort of stuff. So there's the anticipation building up to it.
Then you said the physical challenge of actually going up.
It's not easy.
You invited me and I'm like, I can't, but but I'm also like I've done the volcano climb in Bali and loved that. It was 3 hours and I was watching people more unfit than me going up faster than me, and I was like, oh, come on, why am I wanting to give up? But it's such a mind battle.
It's a mind thing, yeah.
There's you could go on these retreats. Well, I guess the people that go on these retreats aren't people that sit there going, oh, I don't want to improve, I don't want to grow. It's people that have gotten to a point where they're like, I want this transformation.
Yeah.
And if I don't get out of my environment, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's right.
So for people that let's say they're sitting in their situation, they're like, something needs to change. What would you say in terms of, would you create a circuit breaker like a retreat? Would you advise people, go do something very different because that'll change things for you?
100%. If you want to create massive change in some way in your life, if you want to get out of whatever hamster wheel you feel like you're in, you've got to do something really different. Otherwise, all the mental work in the world won't really create that transformational change unless you actually go and do something different as well. We are physical creatures. Our brains and our minds are part of our body. We're an organism, right? And everything's connected. And if you're sitting still, and this is a slightly tangent analogy, but in terms of our biology and what's going on, if you're sitting in a position and then you're stuck in some kind of more primal emotion like anger or frustration, which is kind of linked to it or whatever, which is coming from the reptilian part of the brain, the back bit, right? Those base level emotions, and you're stuck in this, and that's feeding into your psychology. The old part of the brain doesn't do logic. You can't talk yourself out of it. You can't sit there and say, hey, just get over it, it's fine, they were just being a dickhead, don't worry about it. It's fine, breathe, relax, come on. But if you're just still sitting still, the old part of the brain doesn't do logic. That's the neocortex doing all that talking stuff, right? So you need to physically move. You need to change your physiology. So if you're sitting, you need to stand. If you're here in the studio, you need to walk outside. Look up at the sky, right? You need to change your physiology to change your psychology. And when you combine that with, affirmations and positive perspective and all that sort of stuff, but when you combine the psychological stuff with the physiological stuff, you can create real change. So that's a small kind of example of the bigger thing of going on a retreat, flying to the other side of the world and going somewhere where the culture's different, the food's different, the smells are different, the people are different, the language is different. And you're like, fuck, where am I? And you also get a perspective on your life that you don't have when you're in your life. When you fly to the other side of the world and you're up on the mountains, you very literally have a different perspective on your life, and you see stuff you didn't see before, and you're like, oh shit, that's why I keep getting that same result. I didn't even see what I was doing until now. And now I see it. It's like, oh, well, I'll change that when I get home,
Yeah, and I can only relate to the retreats I've been on were mainly like Bali based. So even when I went there for the first time, I was telling you at coffee, like 100 people from around the world, people that thought like me, and I was like, whoa, I've never been in a room like this.
Yeah.
And then we did like the waterfalls, we did the volcano climb, and all these different things where even just being in a country like Bali, third world, I think they call it, it's you see how little they have. And how much we have, I have, and how much I stress about certain things that in this person's world isn't a stress. They just go, I'm happy to be alive type thing, or have whatever I've got I'm happy with.
Yeah.
And that, because I went so young, I went at 21. I was like young. 21 for me, that opened my eyes to, when I'm in Bali, I've only got a suitcase. I'm okay. I don't need all the other things that I have. Like here, I've got a car, I've got a place that I rent, all those types of things. But when I'm in Bali, we're staying at a $13 a night place with heaps of other people, and I was fine.
Yeah.
But it was that shift of like my life. When you go see these things, you can not compare, but you can see how life is different for other people.
Yeah, completely. Perspective. And people who have a lot less than us, like you're saying. I was just chatting with someone this week about shedding stuff, material stuff. And I was remembering there's been a few times in my life where I've let go of pretty much all of my material possessions. One time in India, when I was spending years there, I even got to the point where I left my guitar in Delhi. I wanted to go around India for a year or so without much at all. I had one little bag. I had a little kerosene cooker that you pump the kerosene in, and it's like a little camping cooker thing, and a pot. And I'd buy my spices and my veggies and stuff in the markets of whatever town I was in. I followed the dry season round so I could live outdoors, pretty much, mostly outdoors, or in a place that was $1 a night, sleeping on the floor. And I had no material possessions, and it was liberating, man. It was so liberating. It was a really, really beautiful, beautiful year. And then after some time, I wanted to have a guitar again. So I was back in the city, and I went and bought a cheap guitar. So I had that again. But yeah, no, so nice, man. And even when I went through what people call the midlife crisis, you and I have spoken about this period before, and for me was a midlife opportunity, midlife awakening. Even then, I didn't want to fight over stuff. I just said to my ex-wife, just have it all. Yeah. I don't want to fight over it. So I just gave her everything. And and then I moved into a rental with my two sons, and I realised, oh shit, we don't have anything. We don't have plates or crockery or cutlery or beds or washing machines or microwave. We had nothing. We had the camping gear. I said, boys, we're camping for a little bit. And then I went on Surf Coast Free Stuff, a Facebook site down the coast. And I just reverse engineered it. Rather than trying to give stuff away, I just went on there and said, hey, community, single dad, I need everything. I've got nothing. And the community was amazing. And I grabbed a trailer, and in 2 days, driving around Torquay and up and down the coast, filled the whole house with everything, and nothing matches.
Yeah. You can see that. It shows how important like community is and can be in your life. And not so much that, we need to rely on them, but having a community around you and being willing to go ask.
I need help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a point where people don't want to get to. I know even myself, even this year, it was a hard point where I went, whether it was financially, job, supporting my mental health, whatever it may be, I resisted so much. Why do you think men struggle with asking for help?
Vulnerability. Because we've been taught that we can't be vulnerable. Because if you're vulnerable, you're weak, you won't survive, you won't climb to the top, you won't provide for your family, you won't attract the partner that you want. That's what we get taught. And asking for help is a vulnerability, you know. But the interesting thing is that, you know, if you're someone who likes to help others, right, which a lot of us are, it feels good to do something kind for someone, feels good, right? Your ability to help others and to give is capped by your ability to receive and ask for help. It's capped because they're part of the same equation, right? It's like yin and yang, day and night, masculine, feminine, giving, receiving. It's part of the same equation. You can be really good at giving, but if you're no good at receiving or asking for help, you can only be that good at giving. And what I've realized over the however many years of practicing asking for help when I need it, which is not as easy as giving, right? But practicing receiving is that the whole equation flourishes more the better you get at this part. Yeah.
And how do we get better at it? For someone that's, you know, I would say looking back on my life, I'm a giver. It was always trying to do, be, and support in whatever ways I could. But even I did and have and still do in ways struggle with receiving, even if it's a compliment. It'd just be like, I'd almost backhand it and be like, you know, oh, thanks, but also you're you're amazing too type thing.
That's
like
right.
It would be.
You try and deflect it.
Yeah. Well, how can someone start to receiving, allowing themselves to receive more in their life?
Start in your closest trusted relationships and let the other person know that your intention is to get better at receiving compliments, help, love. Let them know. And when you let them know it, it's beautiful because it deepens the empathy. They go, oh, wow, yeah, okay, sure, I can support you with that. And it also creates a bit of accountability because then the next time they say to you, wow, you're amazing, you're wonderful, and you go to deflect it and say, oh, yeah, but so are you. It, you know, takes a mirror, blah, 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 whatever. Because you've already said to them you want to get better at receiving, if it's a good friend, they'll say, hey, shh, just let me compliment you and receive it. They'll call you on it.
Yeah.
Right. So that can be this accountability part in relationship. We exist in relationship. You and I were talking about this before when we went to get a coffee. We exist in relationship. That's quite a deep and profound statement, but it's true. Right. But anyway, so if you bring it into the relationship, that can really help. I think really, you know, initially just making the commitment to yourself that you want to get better at receiving. When you're in you're moving apartment or something and you're like, oh God, I've got to move all this furniture. Normally you're like, oh no, I can do it. Pick up the phone. Just go, all right. Hey, any chance you could come and help me move this wardrobe? Right? Just little things like that, asking for help. If you're in a tough spot financially, asking someone, hey, can you spot me? You know, just practicing it, but sharing it with your friends and loved ones as well, I think really helps. You know, another place, and people don't want to talk about this because they're scared to talk about sexual intimacy, but another place that quite often we're really good at giving in, well, I don't know about everyone, but certainly for me, it was always easy to give to my partner, to pleasure my partner. That was easy. But to lie back and receive was really hard. You know, bordering on anxiety hard. No pun intended. But receiving in that space as well can be quite confrontational. But when you're with someone who you trust and you breathe into it and you allow them to give you pleasure and you just lie there and receive, it's a deep practice. It's a tantric practice, you know. And all of these are fractals of each other, right? When you get better at receiving in one aspect of your life, you get better at receiving in other aspects of your life as well. It's all connected.
And I think there's a side of it where if you deny someone that you receiving their giving opportunity, it blocks them from them being able to give.
100%.
And I don't think I ever I realized that perspective until maybe this year, where I had people do it to me where I was like, but I want to be there for you. And they'll be like, no. And I'll be like, okay, well,
you're blocking the flow here. You're blocking the flow of love. You're not letting them love you, essentially, is what you're doing. It's so true, man. Really good point. So if you're someone who, struggles with putting yourself first, then you can frame it like that. Hang on, this is not about me. I'm blocking that person from, wanting to help me. And that's not okay. So I'm going to say, all right, come and help me. Yeah.
And how do you think this comes into play when you're talking about relationships, let's say relationships, your career, your wealth. How much does that come into play of us blocking our own receiving from the universe, from these opportunities?
Well, look, I mean, I don't know, but I feel like they're intrinsically and inseparably a part of the same thing, right? If you're blocking your flow in one way, blocking the flow of receiving help from from friends, say, then maybe energetically, physiologically, metaphorically, psychologically, you're blocking yourself from receiving abundance. Maybe your business doesn't, have as much flow either.
Why though? Why do you think we do it?
Why do we do it? No. I think the root belief at the bottom of all of it is that I don't deserve it, or I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. Who am I? It's the imposter syndrome. It's a classic human behavioural thing. I've coached now, God, I don't know, more than 10,000 hours of coaching. Maybe probably closer to 20, I think. Anyway, a lot of coaching. And dude, it is one of the most common limiting beliefs that people have. I'm not enough, right? And so when something starts to get successful, we sabotage it. Yeah, whether it's a relationship or whether it's your business or whatever. Or for people who are wildly, quote unquote, successful, the imposter syndrome. They keep feeling like someone's going to come and knock on the door and say, you don't deserve all of this success, and take it away from them. It's a very common human thing, but I think that's what is lying underneath the blockage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a way that we can ever not have that though?
Yeah, 100%.
Not completely.
Oh, we can. Well, I mean, we can keep moving towards it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. We can definitely get better with it. So we have been accidentally, unconsciously brainwashing ourselves our whole life. Right? Subconsciously, unintentionally. Whoops-a-daisy. Whoops-a-daisy. Where did I get that belief from, right? But we can consciously brainwash ourselves in a more functional way. And for me, that was when I had I think you and I have spoken about the Sweat Lodge night, the catalyst night to my whole midlife crisis thing.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know if we've spoken before about the Sweat Lodge experience that I had, men's circle, Sweat Lodge,
Possibly,
out of body.
But
yeah, so anyway.
Refresh me.
Yeah. So it was a Sweat Lodge experience with a group of men that I've been sitting in circle with for years. And it was a men's sweat, and it was super hot, this particular sweat. And I had an out-of-body experience. And now you can say it was the heat exhaustion, or you can say it was the hyperventilation, or you can say whatever it was. I don't actually mind.
You were dehydrated, Jim. But anyway,
right.
Whatever it was.
Whatever it was, I don't mind. I had an out-of-body experience, and I was 5 years old. And I was flying around.
You were in the Sweat Lodge at 5?
I was, when I had my out-of-body experience, I was flying around. And I was my 5-year-old self again, as a 40-year-old man. And it was free. It was joyful. It was beautiful. It was my age of innocence. It was stunning. And I found out later, I realized later that it was, when I was 5, I was still in my age of innocence. And then when I was 6 years old, that something happened. My dad lost his temper, blah, blah, blah. That changed. That's a different story. But I had that out-of-body experience. Then I went home, and Mum had been over at my place looking after my kids. My kids were, 5 and 3 or something at the time. And I got home, and then Mum went, and I was at home with my boys on my own. And I got in, and I went to sleep, and I had the most insanely clear, lucid dream, like it was reality, right? And in this dream, I had this serpent living in my core, like down my core. And it had always been there. But in the dream, I had to get this serpent out of me, right? And I was reaching my hands down my throat and getting this serpent and pulling this serpent out of me, and it was writhing and everything, and I'd pull it out, and as soon as I'd put it on the ground, it would slither back into me again, right? And I knew I had to get it out. That's all I knew. And halfway through the dream, one of my boys was unsettled in his bed. And as a parent, I had to go and settle him. But I knew the work in the dream wasn't done yet. So I stayed half asleep, went in, settled the child, got them back to sleep, went back to bed, went back into the dream to finish the work. And I needed help, right? I couldn't do it on my own. So then there were these anonymous men around me, brothers. And they helped me get this serpent out. And we got it into this big jar. We got the serpent in the jar and it was out of me and it couldn't come back in. The work was done. And when I woke up in the morning, straight away I knew what the serpent was. For the first time, I hadn't read any books on this or anything like this. It just came to me. I'm like, wow, that serpent was my belief that I'm not good enough. That serpent was my belief that I'm not enough. And I just went, whoa. And then I was like, wow, that belief isn't going to serve you, mate. You need to change that. And then all of these books in a row just came across my way, you know, like Evolve the Brain by Joe Dispenza and other books like this about how you can change your beliefs. And so I went and started doing the work to consciously change my belief, you know. And now when I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, of course I'm enough. Of course I'm enough. How could I have even thought that I wasn't? Because I'm exactly enough to be who I should be, which is me. And just the way I am, we spoke about this in one of our other conversations, right? I'm exactly enough to be who I should be, which is me. I shouldn't be more like anyone else, right? And now I've brainwashed myself to believe that I'm more than enough. And because I believe that, I'm not getting in the way of abundance and flow and the work that I do and the community that I'm a part of globally and my beautiful relationship with Talia and our kids and the whole thing, you know, because you change in here first and very literally your experience of reality changes.
I think that's where in society, it's like, what's the external thing that I can do that's going to change that thing?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, what you said before was about, you know, these people that go on your retreats and have transformation, and then you need to integrate that. And it's the consistent daily things that you do. Like the experiences are fantastic, and maybe it's reading the book, but then it's you implement it.
You have to.
Because otherwise it's just good information.
When I started, so around this time of the midlife awakening, there were some habits that I started to form. Mindfulness meditation, affirmations, the cold water at the end of the hot shower, things like this, right? Pause moments throughout the day, pausing. I still do these to this day. I'm never going to stop. It's not like you tick a box. It's not like you read the book and go, okay, great, now I'm going to have transformation. No, you change the way you live. You change the way you be. That's how change becomes sustainable and ongoing, because you wake up each day and do the thing, you know.
Yeah. I love that, because you said you change the way you be.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I teach in my events and programs is, instead of a lot of people, like I was saying before, it's they think it's have, do, be, where once I have the result, then I'll do the things and then I'll be that person, where, you know, actual transformation and changing your life starts with being that person.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, completely. And we also, with the have, do, be thing, we think about, what do I want to have? I want to have that house, or I want to have that relationship, or I want to have that experience. And then we go, okay, well, I want to have that. So what do I have to do to get that? Right? So I've got to work extra hard, or I've got to, you know, do this and I've got to do that. And that then determines who you're being. You know, stressed, tired, worried, anxious, right? But what you're suggesting, which I love, is to flip it and go, who do I choose to be today? And by choosing who you be, that determines the quality of the things that you do. And when the quality of the things that you're doing is at a higher level, you get better results anyway. And then you turn around and you go, oh my God, look at my life. Look at what I've got. And it wasn't because I was always chasing this thing that I want to have. It was because I was waking up and focusing on who do I want to be. There's a really cool little exercise where you can very quickly have some clarity around that foundational sense of identity. that no one can take away from you. Do you want me to share it with you?
Yeah, love to. No, don't. Keep it to yourself.
So, it's just a mind experiment, right? Just imagine you're a fly on the wall at your funeral, right? And you are observing a very close friend or family member, and they're reading out your eulogy. So they're describing what sort of a person you were, right? Imagine, what would you really hope to hear them say about you? Not what do you think they'd say. What would make you really happy to hear them say as they're describing what sort of a character you were, right? And write those words down. Kind, generous, a good friend, hardworking, peace, whatever. Write them all down. Straight away, boom, you've got your core values, or at least some of them, right? Because those words that you hope to hear people describe you as, these are your core values. Take those core values, put them into an I am statement. I am a, insert here, whatever you've written down. I am a kind, generous, caring, loving, open-minded, action-taking man. That's mine. Put it into an I am statement. When you focus on being that person, which you can do right now, there's no obstacles. There's nothing that needs to happen in order for you to be that person. It's not like I'm going to be a millionaire, but to get that, I've got to create this successful business and I've got to do this and this has to happen and this has to happen. No, nothing else needs to happen. You can choose right now to be kind, loving, generous, open-minded, action-taking, whatever your values are. Right? Nothing in the way. You can be it right now. And the other thing too is that regardless of all of the other vehicles in your life, all the other roles that you play, so-and-so's husband or wife, father, mother, coach, surfer, piano player, artist, musician, whatever, all those vehicles, when any of them are taken away from you, when someone dies, who you are, how you identify is still there. You're still you, right? Whereas if you've identified with the vehicle, so just say, for example, there was the child prodigy piano player, you know, and they just became this genius pianist, and they played for the Sydney Philharmonic Orchestra or whatever, right? And then when they meet people, people say, "Hi, who are you?" And John says, I'm John, the concert pianist. Right? So that John's sense of identity is the concert pianist. What happens when John gets arthritis or can't use his hands anymore? Identity crisis. Fuck, who am I? Who the fuck am I? But I'm the piano player. I can't play the piano anymore, right? Because he identified with the vehicle. The vehicle was playing the piano. But when you identify as your core values and you aspire to be them each day, kind, generous, loving, blah, 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 right? No one can ever take that away from you. There's this foundational sense of identity that is robust, man, you know? So, yeah, anyway, it's a cool little exercise to do.
I wrote it down because it's like, I've shared this before on the podcast. And this is where I go back and I go, it was so profound that I can't be making this up because I remember it so clearly. Grade 5, we got asked to write, not our eulogy, but what would you like people to say about you at your funeral? Grade 5, Miss Newton, the Lake Primary School. Thank you so much. Been trying to track her down since to talk about this, but can't find her.
Legend.
Got married and changed name, obviously. But I remember sitting there and never thinking of like, you know, a sad thing or, you know, anything crazy. It was just like, okay, well, what would I... Because I'd been to a few funerals at that point. What would I like people to say? And I remember writing, you know, soccer player, but I also remembered writing inspired people, helped people, was a good son, was a good brother, was a good father. Like, all like family came into it and was like... it was that whole point of like helped people... was kind, like those things came up. And I don't know where it is. Mum's probably got my book stored somewhere. But I remember that in grade 5. And only on one of my last events last year, I kind of brought it back in as a thing to do, where it was write that. Because I've been to some funerals this year, unfortunately, and sitting there and going, this is going to happen to me at some point. And it's that whole thing of like, you know, it could happen any day. People, will be there, will be upset, and then, they'll move on with their life and type thing. But I do think about legacy in that way. I do think about, well, what impact do I want to make on people while I'm here?
Yeah.
And doesn't have to be in a way that's, he changed people's lives. It could be, but even those little things of like, he was kind.
Yeah.
He made me feel
seen. He made me feel, insert here, how they felt.
Yeah.
That's what people remember. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, that legacy thing, isn't it? Because your name will be forgotten. I mean, you think about the guy who invented penicillin, right? He changed the world. Penicillin changed humanity. Do you know his name?
Nope.
I don't know his name. Most people don't know his name, right? Or think about your grandparents, right? And most people know the names of their 4 grandparents. Do you know the names of your 8 great-grandparents? Do you know their first name? No. So think about this. Your grandkids, their kids won't even know who you were. They won't know who Carlo was in terms of name. But the impact that you have, the beautiful, subtle, and sometimes not so subtle impact, your son becoming who he becomes by having you as his dad, when he grows up seeing a man who models and bees kind and caring and considerate, that's informing who he's becoming, right? And then that informs who his children become, and so on. There's your legacy. And it comes back to that statement, doesn't it? The I am statement.
I was going to say, unless they go on YouTube and type in Carlos Cirillo. Thank you, technology, for that one. But this is also why I'm inspired by, you writing a book, and I've been, signed for 2 years, and I'm starting it now. It's like, I want to leave these things. And this is why that change, and talking to Dr. John DiMartini recently, was it shifted from, speaker, entrepreneur, these things that I loved and still do, but I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
I want to teach these things through my experiences, through the things that I learn, through the conversations that I have, so that can get passed on. And that's why it also changed how I use social media. Every post for me is teaching. It's not about me and what does my life look like. Who cares?
Yeah.
What can I share that will make someone feel a certain way,
Yep.
or teach them something that will improve their life?
Yep.
And that for me took away all this pressure of it needs to do this. It needs to get this result. It needs to teach. And if that's 1 or a million, then that's what it is. And I think it's also coming back to the legacy part. I don't want to be known for, I was famous on Instagram.
No.
Who gives a shit? How did that impact someone's life?
Yeah.
It's, someone that was kind, that believed in me.
Yeah.
They're the things that were so important. So I love that task of writing your eulogy. I think that's a powerful one. So the book is
The Art of Conscious Communication
for
Thoughtful Men.
Thoughtful men. Why is it important for men to become more conscious in communication?
Oh, look, it's important for any of us to become more conscious in communication, and even more so now than ever before, if we want to remain relevant in this new world of AI, where AI already can and will only continue to be doing things much better than us, right? So rather than trying to compete with AI, I think we should be looking at what aspects of our humanness will we remain relevant in? Where should we be focusing? And so isn't it interesting that AI is emerging through language models? Right? That's where the intelligence is coming from, through its ability to master language. And then it's showing us, which is communication, right? But then it's showing us that language is only, some people say different percentages, but let's go with 15 to 20% of communication is the actual words. And the rest of it is the intonation. And more than the intonation, when you're sitting in a room with someone, there's energy, and there's actual physical stuff. We're in a space together, right? So what parts of communication are still the human parts that AI can't do, And even as it gets better at trying to represent us visually and with the tone of voice, etc., there's still there's still the hug, right? If you know what I mean. Literally and metaphorically, there's the hug, there's the connection, there's the rapport that is organic, you know, which I don't think will be replaced for quite some time. So that's communication, you know, and it's important for all of us. And communication underpins our ability to be effective in everything that we do, everything. Whether you're taking an idea and manifesting that idea into reality, if you can't communicate the idea, it amounts to nothing, right? And people, unfortunately, because of the incentives that drive the algorithms, and because of the incentives that drive the political binary systems, you're either this or that, division is being driven into us a lot, right? People are being driven into you're either this or that. And the quality of the communication across these divides of difference is deteriorating. People are shouting at each other. It's like they've got the caps lock on, you know? I said to my son the other day, my 20-year-old's on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, and he's on there because he's a film buff. He's at uni studying film. He loves everything to do with the movies and film. And so he's on Twitter because he gets a lot of information from there. I said to him, dude, the quality of the discourse on there is terrible. It's just people canning each other. It's just a shit fight. It's the town square where people are just slinging shit at each other relentlessly. Get off it, mate. You can get information on films from other sources, you know, and it's a big leap for him to imagine life without X. Like, dude, get off it, you know. So the quality of our communication has been deteriorating, and I think it's really important that we focus on remembering how to communicate more consciously, you know. And the reason the book was written for men is just quite simply because when I started writing the book generally, I had a book writing mentor in Sydney. Shout outs, Susan Pearce, you rock. And Susan said to me, Jem, you need to pick a niche, right? It's a great book, but it's just too broad. And she suggested it to me. She said she'd been reading my manuscripts, and she said, I think this book would be really good for men, you know. And it was when I was writing it at the start of COVID, there were some prominent male figures here in Australia that had been behaving appallingly. And it's embarrassing to be a bloke when you see blokes behaving like that. It's like, oh, fuck, come on, guys, pick your game up. You know, we can do better than that, men. So I was quite passionate about it. And also I was passionate about it because of the journey that I'd been through with anxieties and questions around masculinity and what is it to be a man and all of this sort of stuff. And then through sitting in men's circles and going to men's workshops and understanding that there's heaps of guys who suffer in silence and don't talk about it because it's vulnerability and they can't share it. I was like, wow, this is something that we need help with. You know, we need to be able to talk about this. So that's why I wrote the book for men. And funnily enough, it's mainly women that buy the book because women buy self-help books and men tend not to. But they buy it, read it, and you know, email me and go, great book, thank you. I'm going to try and get my husband to read it. Which they've been doing, which is good. This one woman somewhere in Europe, she emailed me. It was such a beautiful email. She emailed me and she said, hey, thank you. I just read your book and it's informed the way that I'm going to raise my 2 sons. And I was like, oh. You know, before when you said if you can just help one person, makes it all worthwhile, that was that feeling. Yeah.
So what is the benefit of if men become more conscious in how they communicate, what does that lead to?
Wow, so many things, man. Less violence. That's massive. 95% of the world's violence is perpetrated by men, right? Domestic violence, whatever, massive amounts of that is perpetrated by men. Street violence, you know. And if we could communicate more consciously about how we're feeling, right? And not bottle it up, then perhaps we wouldn't explode and become aggressive and violent. So that's massive. Collaboration, collective consciousness coming together and being able to harness the power of diversity, right? So when you have a different idea to me, really different, rather than us getting defensive and our egos defending our sense of the way we think things should be and us fighting about it, right? If we could communicate more consciously and lean in and be curious about, wow, how did you come to think of it like that, dude? That's so different to what I thought, right? And when we're sitting around a table and there's people from all walks of life, across age, across gender, across culture, across everything sitting around the table, when we can communicate more consciously, we are harnessing this much broader bandwidth of creative problem-solving potential solutions, right, to the bigger problems. Right? The biggest problems humanity have got at the moment need collaboration in terms of collective consciousness to solve these problems. We've got to come together to sort this shit out, right? And we can only do that when we communicate consciously with each other. So I think it's ultimately important. And look, for men, when we can communicate more consciously, which for me is being, when you're more conscious of something, you're more aware of it, right? And so the more aware you are of the communication itself, rather than just what I want out of this, but what is for the greater good? What's going on here? When you can get out of your own way, put your ego to the side, and lean into the communication itself. And communication comes from the Latin noun communicatio, which is a sharing, right? Or communicare is the verb, which is to make common, communication, community, right? When we communicate more consciously with each other, we get along better, our relationships are better, and the quality of our relationships is directly correlated to the quality of our life, right? We were talking about this before. How good is your life? How good are your relationships? How good are your relationships? How good is the communication? So yeah, so many reasons I think it's important, man.
And on that topic of relationships, because I think that's where, there is a lot, I've experienced myself, a lot of communication breakdown, especially, and like I've heard and also been in that situation myself of probably not communicating the most effectively. Whether that's communication in terms of listening, or communication in terms of what I say.
Yep.
How can we improve our communication in relationships, as men, as women?
Yeah. Well, the masculine energy, right? And we know that women have access to masculine energy, men have access to feminine energy, right? So I'm just talking about the energy styles now, not the gender. Masculine energy wants to get to the end, right? So the masculine energy in us wants to get to the result of the conversation. So if you're in communication with a feminine energy, and that person, whether it's she or he or they, whatever, but the person in their feminine, if they're expressing how they're feeling about something, the part of you that goes, I got it, just do this, and tries to fix it, that's the masculine energy. And that's not always going to serve a purpose, because sometimes the person sitting with you doesn't want you to fix them. They want you to seek to understand how they're feeling, right? So if you're a bloke who's very masculine and you notice your partner when she's expressing herself and she ever says to you, stop trying to fix me, or you're jumping to the end of it, you go, I get it, I understand. Just move A to B and then you won't have to deal with C anymore, right? Now I know that your intention is good. You're trying to help her. That's not always what she wants. I can't remember what your question was. Something about how can we
communicate more effectively in relationships?
Yeah, so one of the keys to this is loosen your grip on the way you think things should be. Loosen your grip on your reality. Loosen your grip on your ideology or your political perspective or your spiritual or religious beliefs. Just become a little bit more soft with the way you hold on to your version of reality, right? Because it's not the only one. And the reason I say this is because we identify with, our ego identifies with our ideology. It identifies with our political point of view. It identifies with our spiritual or religious beliefs. That's who we think we are, right? And the ego is massively defensive because the ego is there to keep you safe, right? So we need an ego. That's fine. But quite often it's driving the bus and we've got no idea that it's the ego that's driving everything. But the ego is massively defensive. It's fueled by fear. Like it gets its juice from fear because it's trying to keep you safe. And it resists change. So when someone comes with a new perspective, the ego's like, no, fuck off. No, it's like this, right? So when you're sitting in a conversation with someone and they've got a different point of view and you're queuing up waiting for a gap to go, nah, bullshit, nah, because of fucking da-da-la-la-la, right? That's all your ego. So that's not communication. That's just confirmation bias and trying to convince other people that your version of reality is the only one, right? So how do we get better in communication? Let go of the need to defend, right? It's not life and death. Me sitting here and letting go of the way I see things and just getting curious about the way you see things, I'm not going to die, and I don't have to agree with you at the end. Yep. But if I've spent some time in curiosity, if I've spent some time going, wow, I didn't think it was possible to see it like that, right? How did you get to that? If I've spent some time in that, now we're in communication. We're in relationship. We're in rapport, right? Yeah. So just notice we're naturally very closed-minded creatures. You notice when you're scrolling through any of the social media platforms and you see something, that's why the algorithms do it, because it's inflammatory and it gets you clicking and going, no, blah, 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 right? When you see something that you don't believe, you immediately have a reaction. You go, oh, bullshit. Right? That's fucked. Right? So when you notice that, next time you're scrolling and you see something and straight away you've got an opinion, oh, that's bullshit. Notice it and go, hang on a second. Whoa, that was an immediate reaction I just had. I'm just going to put that phone down for a sec. I'm just going to sit here and breathe. And I'm going to just consider alternative perspectives. Doesn't mean I need to change my mind. I'm just going to consider what might it be like to be someone who is pro-life rather than pro-choice, rather than just being that's fucked, right? So this is a practice of open-mindedness. When someone has a different opinion, rather than getting all like, no, you just go, wow, what? That's a way that we can improve our communication for sure.
Is there any advice you give people in relationship about communication and, something that you've learnt in your journey?
Man, one of the reasons I was really interested in communication is because contextually we can be, at varying different ends of the spectrum of ability, right? So when I was back in my previous marriage and I'd go to work and I was a senior leader and I had a whole bunch of crew that I needed to communicate with and I was pretty good. I could communicate pretty well. They understood what I was saying. And then I'd come home in my marriage and I was shit. My wife used to say to me, you're really fucked at communicating. And she was right. Because I'd get all tongue-tied and I'd get all frustrated and I just couldn't. So I'd just shut it down and I've never liked fighting or arguing. And so I'd just kind of go, oh, don't worry about it. Just whatever you want. And I just became an island, and she's like, where are you? I can't be in relationship with you. It's like you're so distant, you're an island. And I had become an island because I was just getting so emotional in the communication and so frustrated in the communication that I would get tongue-tied and then I'd feel like a dickhead, so I'd just stop talking, right? And I've since, after speaking with a lot of men about this, realised it wasn't just me, So in relationships, with communication, use the breath. Consciously use the breath. If you're in a situation and you're noticing that you're starting to get a bit emotional or a bit frustrated or a bit, right, and your mind might start to race a little bit, slow your breathing down. Just consciously breathe a bit more slowly. Try and become still. Try and become more still, right? And if you are more masculine energy and your partner is more feminine, don't take what she's saying literally, right? The feminine expresses themselves emotionally. They don't literally mean what they say, but masculine speaks literally. So if the masculine says, I am fine, the masculine means not great, not bad. Fine means fine. Feminine speaks in code. I am fine The subtext might mean, I'm actually really fucking struggling right now, and if you give a shit about me, you'll try and find out how I'm feeling. But she says, I'm fine. Right? But also, if the feminine is expressing herself in a moment when she's really needing you to do something for her and you're not doing it, she might say, you never do anything for me. Don't take it literally. Because the masculine hears, I never do anything for you. Never. You fucking kidding me? I do shit for you all the time, right? And so now you've taken it personally and literally, and you're firing up, and she's going rah, 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 and you're going fucking rah. Now you've been caught into the emotion as well, and you're both kind of flying around and nothing's getting communicated. Just resentment. When she says you never do anything for me, don't take it literally. Stay still, remain present, lean in, hold space for her to express how she's feeling. Right? Seek to understand why she's feeling this way. Right? But it's your job to just become still and present, not still and shut off, still and present. Yeah. And look, this is a ABC 1, 2, 3 trick, but it works. When someone's said to you, this is how I'm feeling, da 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 da, super simple. Just repeat back to them, what I've heard you say is that you're feeling this. Just repeat back to them using their words, some of the things they just said. Just repeat it back. Shows them you were listening. And they're like, yes. They're like, wow, you were listening. Yeah, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. So there's some tips. Oh, there's so many more, man. When she says to you, fuck off, leave me alone, I just need some space, it doesn't always mean that. That can be a test. Like, are you going to stick around through thick and thin? When I'm old and grey, are you still going to stick around? Or are you going to be off chasing some young, hot thing, right? Are you going to stick by me when I'm at my worst, when I'm sick and, at my lowest? Are you going to stay by me? She's testing you. Are you going to stay there? Are you trustworthy, right? Fuck off, leave me alone. Might mean, and if you say, fine, I'll give you some space. And you go off and play golf or I'm over-characterizing, right? But you know what I mean. If you go, oh, fine, I'll just give you some space and leave, you just failed. She's like, see, you didn't stick around. A lot of feminine don't even know that they're doing this. They hear this, though. Every time I run a workshop on this, they hear this and they go, oh, my God, that's so true, right? It's just dynamics. But if you say, I feel you're really upset right now. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. And she might test you even more. And go, I told you, leave me alone. And she storms off to the bedroom. And you come and you stand outside the door and you say, baby, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. I've upset you and that upsets me, but I'm not leaving you. And you might just go, oh, just give me some time. And you gently come into the bedroom and she hides under the doona. And you sit on the bed and you say, I'm right here. And then eventually you slowly climb under the doona with her, right? And you watch what happens. She ends up crawling over to you and putting her head on your chest and crying and says, I love you. Yeah. But what most of us do is when she says, fuck off, leave me alone, we take it literally and we go, okay, and we leave.
This is such an interesting point. What if they actually mean leave me
I know.
alone?
Well, sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. It's tricky. It's hard. Sometimes they do.
Because this is so contextual to the scenario.
It's not easy, man. It's not easy. But when we communicate, when we both learn this dynamic stuff together, like me and Talia, we study this stuff together because we're both aware of it. It doesn't mean that we don't naturally still live it, but we can communicate about it. Because sometimes if Talia comes to me and she's just expressing herself, but she's expressing something that's a problem, a challenge or a problem, something she's not happy about at work or whatever. And I'm listening. And if I'm not sure, is she wanting me to come up with some proposed solutions now? Is she asking for some advice on how to fix it? Or does she just want me to does she just want to express and have me just sit and listen? If I'm not sure, I'll just ask her. I'm going, baby, are you actually asking for some ideas now? She goes, no, can I just express myself? I'm like, yeah, I can do that 100%. Go, right? So if I'm not sure, I ask. It's not that easy to do with the I'm right here, I'm not going anywhere bit. You just got to kind of gauge it. And that doesn't happen for us very often. We hardly ever fight. But if there is a moment, just trust your gut. Trust your gut. Don't try and change her or fix her. That doesn't work. Let her be where she's at. Let her be emotional. And that's beautiful. Honor the emotion. Honor the feminine is the life force, man. The feminine is the breath, the life, the movement, the moment. The masculine is the result, the goal, the touchdown. Right? So let her be in the moment and hold space for her. Just sit there. Be still. Be a foundation. Be present. That's masculine. Presence. Right? And most times when she says, leave me alone, I think it's an opportunity for you to show her that she can trust that you're not going to leave her. Right? And it might get to the point where she says, baby, thank you so much. I trust that you're not going to leave me. But can I just have some time, please? And I'll go, sure. I'm going to go start cooking dinner or whatever. You know. So look, man, it's not easy. It's tricky. It's hard to read because it's code, right? It's all this human matrix, energetic code stuff. But talk about it. Talk about it. Go to your partner and say, hey, I listened to this podcast and some of it really made sense. What do you think about this? See what they say. Could we work on that together? Go and read the David Data Way of the Superior Man book together. Tyler and I read that book to each other. We'd read a chapter to each other each night, you know.
There's a really interesting concept that I'd love to hear your perspective on. And we watch movies, or grew up watching movies and TV series where I noticed, I'm an observer, right? I think I just like observing what human nature, what people do, their behaviors. And one of the things I've noticed in TV shows and movies is that there's always these like cliffhanger moments of like someone will do something, the elevator shuts, and it's like, why didn't you just say like, no, that's not what I meant, or that's not what happened? But yet the doors will close. There's been a conversation, but that person hasn't responded, and then dun dun dun, they think like, you know, why didn't you just go back up and tell that person, no, that's not what I meant. I actually meant this. And I've watched this on TV shows and stuff. What was I watching? I think it was maybe One Tree Hill. I don't know if you watched TV series. Okay. It's an older sort of one. And there was so many moments where like they'd be fighting and then one person would just say something and then it would cut to the next scene. And I go, why didn't that person just say, no, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's not actually what happened. But it just cuts to the next thing. And I think that I relate that back to my life, and there's, you know, I don't think there's those sorts of moments. But my question is, and something I've been pondering is, do you think that we would benefit from over-communicating rather than under-communicating?
Yeah, if you had to choose between over-communicating or under, go for over. Definitely.
Because I think that even for me now and in my, you know, certain relationships in my life or even friendships, yes, it's don't write a novel as a text message, but over-communicate in the way of like, for example, if someone's like, hey, can we catch up? And I know that I can't for whatever reason, or I'm not feeling it. Instead of being like, no response, or which is still valid, right? Or saying no, not right now. Over communicate, hey, I'm just feeling pretty empty right now. I've got some other things I need to do. Can we catch up in maybe 2 weeks? That over communication of just a no.
Yeah. Can I just add something into this? Over communication, my version of over communication, doesn't mean more words. You don't need a lot of words to communicate. In fact, I'm a fan of keep it simple and kind, but to the point. What I mean by over communicate is if I'm feeling something and I'm not sure whether I should let you know or not, usually, rule of thumb, I should let you know if it's going to impact you in some way, right? Or if I'm thinking something, I should communicate it with you if we're in relationship together, right? You know, if one of my boys has done something that I don't think's okay, rather than sit on it and just go and let them know, you know. But you don't. It doesn't mean more words necessarily. It depends on you. I mean, Talia uses a lot of words. She's really beautiful with words too. She writes really well. But she'll send a text message this long, and that's her style. That's the way she should do it. 100%. I would say the same thing in 2 sentences. So there's different ways of doing it, but I think simple is good because you can stay clear, but you can also still be kind. If I'm a boss and I've got an employee and I need to let them know that the way they've been doing something is not okay, they're not following a process, or it's not values aligned or whatever. Rather than sitting down with them and fluffing here and there and doing the old shit sandwich thing where you tell them something good about them and then you tell them the thing you really wanted to tell them and then you tell them something nice again. People see through all of that. Like, why are we sitting here? I think be kind and direct. Hey, I've brought you in to sit here with you now because I care about you thriving in this organisation. And the way you've been doing this process is out of alignment with our core values. So I want to talk with you about that. Mm-hmm. Just like that. Right? That was kind. It was clear. It was straight to the point. And it's respectful. I'm not going to try and bullshit you. This is what we need to talk about. And they go, okay, all right. Yeah. So over-communicate. If you're feeling or thinking something and you're in a relationship with someone, let them know. Doesn't mean you have to give it, a whole novel.
And even now, like, I can think, like, there's certain messages that I'm going to, respond to that if I just take a breath instead of that automatic response, and maybe left it a bit of time to kind of sit with it, and maybe I'm feeling something from something else that isn't warranted to go into there. And there's been times where, even recently there was a few messages with a friend of mine, and afterwards I wrote, hey, I just want to say I don't think I communicated that properly or the most effective way. I'm sorry, it probably should have been a phone call, to be honest. But this is what I actually meant from that. So I hope that didn't come across that way. And if it did, I'm sorry.
Yeah, beautiful.
And it's just... But I guess that only comes... Like, I still made the initial mistake of... The communication...
Wasn't great.
Yeah. If someone's done that with me... And they then acknowledge that, I go, again, even if someone says something, I go, we're human.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. People have emotion. People get, fired up in the moment, and things happen, and then things are said, and But for me personally, I'm like, I do want to keep continuing my betterment of how I communicate.
Yeah, and owning it. I mean, I also, in alignment with what you're saying, I think that if you're the one who has something to communicate, so you're the one who's instigated the communication, then the responsibility of the success of that communication is yours. If I've come to you and said, hey, Carlo, I need to let you know something, and I communicate it, and you misunderstood me, it's not your fault. I need to own that, like you said, and go, oh, hang on, I didn't communicate that very well. Let me try another way. And even if that wasn't in the moment, like you said, retrospectively, you go, oh, I didn't do a very good job there. Hey, I didn't communicate very well. My apologies. I'd love to try again. Yep. I think that's good. That's functional. That's healthy. And when someone does that, you're like, oh, wow, you're owning your stuff. And we're not perfect. Well, we're perfectly imperfect, right? And we stuff things up a lot because we're human, and we stumble over ourselves and we trip over ourselves and we fuck up. But if you can notice it and go, and go back and have a second shot at it, then that's good.
Yeah. Last question. What's one thing that you could give to men to help them improve their lives, their relationships, their communication?
If I could give you the already formed habit of a daily practice, or even once every couple of days, but a regular practice of mindfulness meditation, if I could just go, boom, there it is. It's a habitual practice of yours. And you woke up every morning and you started your day by doing 10 to 20 minutes of mindfulness meditation, that's what I would give you. Because it gives you so much more. When you've been doing it for years, you just become more calm. You become more present. You become less governed by your emotions, but more aware of your emotions. You become more self-aware. When you start to feel an agitation around something, You know what it is and why it's there. And if it serves a purpose, that you can harness that emotion to create the motion, to create the action in that moment. That's what emotions are for, right? But when it's not serving its purpose anymore, you can go to a place of observation and notice how that emotion shows up within you and allow it to just dissipate and change and move. Come back to a place of equanimity, which is non-reaction, but just calm, centeredness, and then be back in relationship with those around you. Dude, it's gold. Not only do you become a nicer person to be around, you actually become much more of the driver of your own physiological bus, not the passenger. You become the driver. This is emotional regulation, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, the ability to communicate and be in relationship with others. If I had a magic wand, ding, just give it to blokes for sure.
And that's one of the ones that I've seen and heard of one of the most difficult ones for people to grasp.
Yeah.
But I agree, it's one for me, even for myself. Like it's the most reflective, and like I do it when I'm also doing things as well. Like whether I'm on a walk, like you said, that slow walk in silence type thing. That's something for me that helps. Normally, I'd have music.
Yep.
In the sauna, I love it. Can't really have electronics while I'm in the sauna, but it's stillness. 20 minutes of just what's coming through, and not necessarily like judging it or like where's it got to go to. I'm trying to figure something out. It's just what's coming through.
Just notice it.
Yeah.
Just notice it.
Because I feel like people, when they think of that, they go, the whole stigma around meditation is have no thoughts.
Oh God, good luck with that. No, the neurons are always firing. Right, but what I've noticed over the years is that meditation teachers, mindfulness teachers will tell you you're not striving, you're not doing it to try and get better at it. Right? You're just doing it, but over time you do get better at it. Right? So you get better at just observing with no judgment, no attachment. Right? So you're not identified with it, you're not in it, you're simply noticing it. And over time, and you can notice your thoughts as those thoughts are bubbling along. You can even go to a place as consciousness and simply notice the thoughts come and go. And what I've noticed over time is that your ability to stay focused improves. So if I'm focusing on my breath, I can stay focused on my breath longer now than I could 12 years ago when I started the practice. Yeah. And I remember at the start, the practice is not an easy habit to form. I'd set my alarm half an hour earlier in the morning. The alarm would go off and I'd be like, oh, really? I just want an extra half an hour sleep, And I had to force myself. So create some sort of leverage over it. Like, Jem, dude, you need to create this habit. Now I look forward to it. Now it's like, 20 minutes where I just don't have to fix anything, don't have to solve anything, don't have to work anything out, don't have to make lunches for kids, I don't have to nothing. I just get to sit and just notice what I notice. But anyway, there's so many benefits for it, man. I think it's a key.
What's the impact that you want to create on the world? We were talking about legacy before and all those things, and people that listen to the podcast probably hear me talk about it a lot for myself. But what's the impact that you want to leave and create? Yeah.
So my mission is turning positive ripples into waves of contribution. So the 8th principle out of the 8 principles to inner peace that I teach in the Himalaya is meaningful contribution, not just throwing money at a charity to try and make yourself feel better. Finding out that part of life that you're actually passionate about, something that you actually really give a shit about, and channeling resource into that, right? And when I can help people do that, then the ripples become waves of contribution, and we can measure that. Our contribution is directly back into the villages that are around our village in the Himalaya, helping kids have access to education. Yeah, so that's what we're passionate about there. And the legacy that I want to leave, man, I just, anyone that I can help communicate more effectively, more consciously, then I know that I'm helping improve their relationships. I mean, my bread and butter work is with senior leaders. I work with CEOs and exec directors, etc. And by helping them communicate more consciously, they create better workplace environments for people to flourish and thrive. So that's my bread and butter stuff. That's cool. And then the global stuff that I'm doing with this beautiful international community of awesome people who are collaborating to try and tip the scales of humanity in the right direction. And my piece in that is helping people find an inner peace, and communicate more consciously with those around them. And by me working with high net worth individuals and helping them find their meaningful contribution, then we have a much bigger impact. So we're going to measure the alumni that come away on this high ticket program will become part of a group where we can measure their contribution. So we'll see that from our program, what are the waves of contribution, and collaborating with other charities as well. There's a charity that are building schools in Africa, and we're a part of that. There's a charity out of Brazil that are building love farms, and they're helping kids in poverty through meditating love, and they're bringing money in so they can go to school and they can afford to have food, and we're a part of that charity as well. So working with other charities also to do that kind of stuff. And one last vision that I want to share with you, because I'm super excited about it. Our family in the Himalaya gave us a little piece of land in the forest on the side of this mountain with these beautiful Himalayan mountains all around. And the land energy there already is really strong, feminine, healing, Mother Earth energy. I think there must be some ley lines that cross in this particular part of the Himalaya. It's just super strong. Everyone I take there goes, whoa, what is the energy here? It's beautiful. So the feminine's already there. We're going to imbue the land with love. Some people will think this is really woo-woo. We're going to imbue the land with love through meditation before we build. Then we're going to choose our builders. And when I ask the builders how much will it cost to build this building, we're going to build a conference centre, and it'll probably be called the Centre of Love. But it's going to be a conference centre with 10 rooms with en-suites where people can come together. When they tell me how much it'll cost, I'm going to say to them, we'll pay you twice that, but every stone you lay it with the intention of love and kindness. Every piece of timber you cut it with love and kindness, right? So we build this building, and it becomes a conference centre where we can invite positive, awesome, amazing souls like you to come and sit together and come into collective consciousness through eating together, meditating together, and sitting together, and then see what creative solutions arise to the surface when we ponder some of the biggest challenges for humanity. That's what we're going to build. That's my vision. And that's probably the thing that I'm most excited about is manifesting that into reality. So watch this space.
That's so exciting. Oh man, I can't wait to see it happen next year or coming years.
Within the next couple of years.
Yeah. That is incredible. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Hey.
It's always an amazing conversation, amazing energy, and like I said, when we're on our walk, it's like, every time we sit down, it's 60 minutes of this much.
Yeah.
But there's so many more conscious conversations to be had. So, thank you for sharing all that you do.
Mate, thank you for inviting me again to come and sit with you and talk about stuff that we're into, and thank you for sharing it and doing everything that you're doing to try and, help humanity just that little bit,
Yeah, I love it.
Awesome.
Look at us creating waves.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So if you're listening and you're inspired and you want to follow Jem, he puts out some valuable nuggets of wisdom online. Head over to
Instagram, Jem Fuller, LinkedIn, Jem Fuller, website, jemfuller.com, and the new program, meaningonthemountain.com.au.
Awesome. Make sure you go check them out. And if you're not already at the Conscious Podcast, we post a lot of different clips in there and stuff like that. And that's where you can find Jem's handle and all that sort of stuff. And also connect with all of us. But until next time, guys, thank you for joining. Peace.